You know, the moment you get money involved in a situation, you do have a bit of control there. And she knows that, and that's why she does it. How are you? How was your week? How have you been?
My week was fine. Like it's just been busy. Actually, yeah, I was feeling like really stressed out like last week. I'm glad I'm feeling a little bit more chill this week. Like I don't know, last week's things just like came to a head for me. It was just like everything was stressing me out, and I'm feeling a bit better this week. So like things are still hectic, but I feel less overwhelmed. Do you ever feel like sometimes you just like, yeah, I mean, you definitely do feel like this. I feel like I overschedule myself now. And
All the time.
yeah.
Every single day of my life. Keep going. 'Cause I'm relating.
No, I'm just like, my whole thing this year was like, I need balance. I need to grow other aspects of my life, and I need to like be more intentional about it. So now I'm like, okay, like I need to book my Pilates class. I need to book my pickleball. I need to just like find more room for things that bring me joy in my life. And, just if I don't schedule them, I won't make time for them, and I'll just sit on my couch and, and then I am miserable because of that. So I'm trying to be more intentional about scheduling those things in, but then that also means I just get so tired, like I just end my week or even my days just being like exhausted. I'm like in a constant state of soreness. But also yesterday I was sort of just reflecting on, I am really happy that all of the things I'm starting to build routine around are wellness things. It's physical movement. It's not, so I am grateful for that. So then things I'm overscheduling myself around are mostly things that are activity based or movement based. They're getting me off of my butt, and I really needed
You can
that.
overdo it on that stuff too, though.
Yeah, that's probably why I've been
Absolutely.
tired. But it's funny. I was I don't know what this was on, but I was watching something, and they were talking about so these like network execs were talking about how the shows that they were working on or being pitched weren't second screen enough, and I guess that is now a way that networks think about this. So basically, a show can't be too complicated because everyone is always doing other things. So you need them to not feel lost. They can easily jump in and out and be on their phones and be, whatever, texting. And that's where we're at. That's me, though. That's how I watch TV.
I'm going through it right now. Do you know how devastated I am to hear that? I get it. Like, there are, and I think that's what it is. It's like what we were just talking about. We jam pack our schedules, and I feel like, it's going to sound like I need help, but like, like most of my days, like I know exactly how my day is going to pan out. Like I know I'm going to wake up, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to work. And then after work, I, have dinner, I'll clean up. And then like, if I'm going to relax, it's like an event. So it's like Greg and I are going to sit down and we're going to watch Severance, and it has my full attention, and my phone is like on the island and I'm not looking at it. Like this is an event. And because like the shows that I watch like with G are all like full attention, like the show. But then like if I'm hanging out with a friend or with my sister, then we're putting stuff on the background where we're like, we're talking, like we're, if we're not talking, we're on our phones. So, like I do get that. I do indulge in shows where it's a second screen show, or like in the middle of the day, if I'm having a slow work day, I might put on like, I don't know, Love is Blind in the background, just because I'm like, oh, I'm tired of sitting in the den. I want to sit in the living room, and I'll put on a show in the background. Like, yes, I get it. It's a thing. I partake, but knowing that that's like a thing that you have to pass now in order to be a show, some sort of like grade, that is really tragic to me. But
it's funny because it's sometimes when you're like, oh, like how dumb do they think I am? Like that's what it is, right?
Good Lord.
But you're exactly right. Like we're the same way. Like me and Justin like have certain shows, like Severance is one of them, where it's like a thing that we do together. So we're gonna put our phones away and watch it, and if one of us is on the phone, the other person is gonna pause it because it's like, you need to
Be
watch
like,
this with me.
Sorry, do you need a minute? We can wait.
Guess which one of us does that? It's not me.
Oh my god, I could talk all day about Severance and second screens, but should we talk about the book?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Yeah, so welcome back, you guys. Today we are talking about the second half of this book, Come and Get It by Kiley Reid. Okay, shit really starts to go down. It really goes down. I did not see any of that coming. Like, it was wild. So much has happened, so much that I didn't expect to happen, but the second part just had me, on the edge of my seat the entire time. So let's get into it. Heather, what has happened?
Okay, so last time we left off when we knew that like Agatha and Millie were starting this thing where Agatha was going to show up like, once a week, sit in her dorm, listen to the students to kind of like glean information from them for the articles that she was writing for Teen Vogue. So that was where we were. And when she was doing this, she was slipping like $40 on her desk as kind of like payment before she left. So that's where we were in the first half. So in the second half, this is continuing. This is becoming a regular thing where Agatha is coming to see Millie regularly. But one night, Millie kisses Agatha when Agatha's on her way out. And Agatha leaves, like, kind of ignores it, like, doesn't, like, maybe she says a comment about how, like, I'm a professor here, like, this isn't appropriate. And she leaves, and she tells herself that this is the right thing to do. And this action had come from, like, advice from, I think her name's Colette, which is a friend of Millie's, and essentially Colette's telling Millie like how to like get someone to like you is you're supposed to like kiss them and then be kind of like, oh, oops, like I don't know, like until they just like fall for you. And so Millie attempts this. Agatha leaves, but then what?
It's genius.
Is it?
It's evil, but
like, does it work? Like,
I don't know.
Maybe.
Our like subconscious shit is so insane sometimes.
That's true. So Agatha leaves, tells herself it's inappropriate. She tells herself that she's done the right thing by leaving. And she gets home and she can't stop thinking about it. And Agatha goes for a run and like happens upon the place that Millie's house sitting, the place that she's hoping to be hers one day. And Agatha kind of comes up to the window and essentially tells Millie, like, okay, if this is going to be a thing, like, we should keep it on the wraps. And they go back to their house, and this is where this, like, affair starts. So the affair is going on, but Agatha's still going to Millie's dorm every week to glean this information from all the girls. And she's writing articles on each of them for Teen Vogue, but she's blending a lot of their traits and gives everyone fake names, which is kind of interesting. She kind of has to because none of them know that she's writing these. And the magazine editor reaches out to her and is like, okay, we need another one about someone who's more relevant that people will relate to. So her final piece is actually on Millie. Sorry, her final piece is one on Millie that she uses like Millie's, restrictive spending, her saving, her diligence, the fact that like she doesn't have any like money from her parents, and she writes about all of this very specific detail. But she changes her name to Becca, which she gets from the book Rebecca, and she just shortens it because I guess she felt like it sounded a bit younger.
Southern.
Struggle. And that's what she said. Yes, it sounded more Southern. But then it became a thing later on when they find out that she had written it, and they're like, why'd you call me Becca? That feels so mean. It's like you think that I'm dumb. Like that was their interpretation of it, which was kind of interesting.
The sort of subjective take on all of these names was actually really wild to read. Like the associations that people have with certain types of names. I don't think that I had sort of noted this in quite this much detail before. I was like, that's so true. Like people really do have these sort of, unsaid sort of associations with them, which really aren't rooted in much, to be honest. It's so, I don't know. Yeah,
It's
keep
like you meet
going.
one person with that name and then you like tie it to a type. But we all
Yeah.
do it. Like people do it with me all the time. But it's interesting how you could see the intent and then the interpretation, which is
Hmm.
always like fascinating. So, meanwhile, we have Kennedy, who's continuing to struggle to make friends and fit in. And she actually applies to a creative writing class taught by Agatha. Agatha is kind of an idol of hers because she wrote the book Satellite Grief, and that's the book that Kennedy keeps flipping through in her room. And this is when we actually get the backstory on Kennedy. And apparently, I didn't see this coming. I thought it was like a sibling died or something like that. But she accidentally killed a dog one day, which for some reason felt so much worse than
Hmm.
a family member dying. And I don't know, I'm not saying that
It
it
was so
actually
bad.
is in reality, but there's something about that being sprung on us that just felt so much darker, I guess because it was
Hmm.
unexpected. After she accidentally kills the dog, I think she enters this like fugue state and just drives off like nothing happened. And then there's like camera footage of it, and she becomes ostracized by like her entire community. And that's kind of like her traumatic event that brought her to read this book, Satellite Grief. So she,
This
go ahead.
Sorry, just to interject there. Like that was devastating to
Yeah.
read. Like I think you're right. It was because it was so surprising. I didn't see it coming. It was graphic, even though like I think the whole description was pretty brief. It was probably only a couple of pages, but it stayed with me. It made me so sad. Like I kept thinking about it. I was
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was very triggering to read that. Um yeah, and I don't know. It felt really real too because it was an accident. It was very powerfully depicted as an accident that you could almost see it happen to you, just
Yeah.
making this like really thoughtless, careless motion that you do all the time, but you just didn't think to check. It's like, we both have cats. And I don't know about you, but I look everywhere
I
all
think
the
about that
time
all the
before I close
time.
anything. Me too,
Yeah.
right? And
Even just
you see,
walking, like I think about it all the time. I've heard horror stories, so that sticks with me.
it was just horrible to read. Yeah.
I think the thing too, when I was like somehow that was worse, is like, if a family member tragically dies, that's very, very sad, and people feel bad for you because of it, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? Objectively sad. This situation, she had a lot of blame. Like everybody kind of blamed her for it. Felt like she didn't do the right thing. So not only did she experience this like tragedy of killing a dog, but then everybody hates her for it, even though it was an accident. And her
Hmm.
best friend like left her, and it just became a thing where she just was left alone. She had this traumatic thing happen, and then everybody in her life left her, and the only person she had left was like her mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was very sad. So we know that that's happening with Kennedy, and she applies for the creative writing class that Agatha is teaching, and she's just like, she wants this so bad, like more than anything she's ever wanted in her life. She's like practicing she's reading out her application letter to her mother over and over and over again, and she gets rejected. And that's kind of the moment when Kennedy definitely starts to spiral a little bit more than she already has. So that's kind of Kennedy's backstory. We also actually get Agatha's backstory too. It's very quick. And what happened is and this is what kind of caused her to write the book Satellite Grief, is she was 16 years old and she was driving one day and she saw a man at a crosswalk with his dog, and the man kind of gestures for her to go ahead and drive because he's like on his phone. I guess he's not ready to cross. So she does. When she does, at the same time, the dog starts going out into the road, and the man, he like tugs on the man. She slams on her brakes, almost hits the man. She doesn't hit him, but the closeness of it causes the man to have a heart attack and he dies. And so she starts to
Yeah.
experience this strange grief where, like, even though she didn't directly kill him, she was kind of involved in his resulting end. She's like, the guy
Hmm.
wasn't even that old. He had a family, and this caused her to spiral. So that's kind of her backstory. on why she wrote that in the first place. Also, there's a lot of like dog stories in this, which I find really interesting. You have like Tyler, sorry, with like her obsession with dogs. Then you have the accidental dog death, and then the dog that led to the other guy's death. I don't know what all that means, but
yeah, I wonder what the theme there is. Yeah,
somebody tell us. Okay, so back to the synopsis. So one night when Agatha is taking notes in Millie's dorm, they're having sex, and Millie like totally neglects her RA duties. I think she turns the ringer off on her phone. And while they're in the middle of this, Kennedy and Peyton are meanwhile fighting in their dorm next door because Peyton had put Kennedy's dirty dishes in her bed. This was kind of her way of getting back at her for not doing her dishes. And they're fighting over this. The scene was like so glaring to me. They're fighting over a dirty pizza cutter, like kind of pulling it back and forth, when it literally like flies up into the air, strikes Kennedy's arm in the middle of the commotion, and causing her to bleed. Millie and Agatha come running during this commotion. Millie thinks Peyton is having an allergic reaction, stabs her with an EpiPen. Agatha, meanwhile, attends to Kennedy's arm while she calls an ambulance, and Kennedy is like bleeding out, but starstruck by Agatha because Agatha is her idol and she's here and she's the one saving her, and this causes her to pass out. Kennedy and Peyton both end up in the hospital. Everyone believes that Kennedy was actually trying to self-harm, and that's kind of the storyline that everybody has in their heads. And Tyler tells the head of the dorm that she had paid Millie to get Kennedy out of the room, and this is her trying to like be like a bit evil and conniving. Like she's really just hoping to get her in trouble. And because of all of this, like it's obvious now that like Agatha and Millie were having a thing. And so Agatha quits her job as the professor, and she ends up giving Millie $12,000 as a down payment for her house. She also pays Tyler. I keep writing Taylor in my notes. I don't know why I refuse to call her that, but Agatha pays Tyler to tell Millie's boss the truth. Millie still ends up losing her promised job of RD, but gets the house. And Kennedy's mom flies in to take care of her. And she says to her, like, one day they're like crying in the parking lot of a Target, and she says to her, like, Kennedy, never do anything like that again. And Kennedy has the opportunity to correct her and tell her that it was like this whole like series of unfortunate events, but she just goes with it and says, I won't, like, don't worry. And that's kind of the end. Yeah. So a lot happened, and it also felt like it was like some things bubbling, and then this crazy thing that happened, and then how everybody processed it in the end, which was kind of interesting. That kind of felt like the second half. Let's chat about it.
Let's chat about it. It's interesting. All of these big moments, these big, not triggering, traumatic moments for these people, right? All of them have been accidents. Isn't that's so tragic? That the repercussions that they're facing, or, well, I mean, Kennedy's, we'll talk about Kennedy's, but really, they're big turning points for all of them, right? And didn't really, there wasn't a lot of intention there with Kennedy and the dog, just, it was careless. She didn't mean to do it. With Agatha, it was that moment of like, everyone's been in that moment where, everyone's like, no, you go, no, you go, no, you go. And then,
oh my God.
And then even with the pizza cutter, just having a little, obviously don't do that with knives, but no one intentionally caused the other harm, but, I mean, yeah, there's that. But then also there's this element of Kennedy has been thinking about this quite a bit, right?
Yeah, like it was accidental with the pizza cutter. And it is one of those things that like people get into fights. It's tragic that it happened that way. Oh yeah, and then you were saying that like she had been fantasizing about that. Did that almost feel like, to me, the moments when she was fantasizing about self-harm, it was less about the harm and more about the resulting affection she would get after, which is so sad.
She just wants connections again with these people that she's tried to reach out to, that she's tried to sort of continue on relationships with, right? Like all her friends from her last college just kind of wanted space and didn't want anything to do with her anymore. And they're starting to reach out now. Her coaches, like, I think it was her aunt or someone else that texted her.
Best friend too.
Yeah, yeah.
Her best friend that had like left her after the incident with the dog was like, I should never have cut you out like that. Like, she is getting the connection that she wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's why she didn't tell anyone the truth, because she was getting the connection she was looking for. Like, she woke up and she saw flowers, and then she fell asleep, woke up, and there was like another bouquet of flowers, and you know, her mom was paying attention. Well, her mom always paid attention to her, but yeah, you're right, she was getting all these messages from people who had cut her out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really sad too, right? Like, she didn't get the support she needed to process the grief of, you know, killing this dog. And part of that is the RAs too, right? And this whole system is so messed up because when you think about it, the RAs are kids too. And
yes,
you know, they're trying to hold them responsible about, well, you didn't see that this girl was struggling and she needed help. But
she's not a mental health professional.
Exactly. Do they get
She's
any
studying,
training around
like,
that?
hospitality tourism management, or like no. That's not her job. Like, is that actually how that works? Like, I never stayed in a dorm before. I always lived off campus.
Okay.
Like,
I didn't know that about you. Yeah? You didn't, not even first year?
Dorm girly.
Okay.
No, first year. No, I lived with my sister in a basement apartment. And then we moved to another basement apartment. And then I lived in a house with like 5 other people. It was like tiny little townhouse and a dodgy part of town, and it was great.
Nice.
I should send you pictures. I walked by it over the holidays. I took a picture of the house that I grew up in.
Sorry, oh my God. Yes, please send me photos. And when we're in Montreal, I'll show you all the places I live. Yeah. I can't wait to do that. We need to do that. No, I only lived in a dorm for the first year. That's how it worked. It was like, first year we'll help you out and then fend for yourself kind of situation. But we had dons. They call them dons, not RAs. I don't know if this is like, is that a
French
like
term?
Canadian thing, or
I don't know.
I don't know what it's short for either, but they were the dons.
Was it essentially the same thing though, where they were supposed to like look after your well-being, or?
Yeah. So they were a couple of years older, you know, usually seniors. And they were sort of responsible for certain like wings of, or certain floors, depending on, you know, the building situation. And I don't know. Usually they were around for, just general life stuff, helping you out with administrative things. Like the first like few days, they helped you. They kind of directed you to places or directed you to where to go to find things or do things. They weren't really there for mental health support. Okay. I just think like it's a lot of load to put on like a kid in college to be like, you need to watch out for these signs, and then, you know, help them out. Like there needs to be additional checks in place, right? Yeah. But also at the same time, like Millie was not like looking out for her at all. She wasn't even like, oh, like she's a little bit distant, maybe she needs some help. Like that wasn't really on her radar at all. It's the sort of situation, though, where she's almost in a position of authority, but doesn't quite know how to handle it. So it's almost like, you know, when you're kind of in it, but you're also supposed to be managing it without training on how to manage it. So she's in a tricky position. But overall, what did you think of Millie's character? It was... I don't know. There's a lot like I liked her character in the beginning, and then now there's like more that's being revealed, and I'm just curious to know what you thought of that.
I think Millie was put into a position in so many different areas where she was supposed to be so adult, and that wasn't fair. And I mean, it kind of started with like her going home to like take care of her mom and make sure she was okay. But then like she came back to school. She works as an RA, someone who's supposed to take care of a bunch of girls who are only like a couple years younger than her, in this massive dorm. And then on top of that, even though she initiated this like kiss with the professor, and everyone keeps saying back and forth like, oh, or like Agatha kept using the defense like, I'm not her professor, I'm a professor, like, so it's different. But at the end of the day, like, Millie's 24. Do you remember what you were like at 24? Like, I remember I had no fucking clue.
Same.
And I think that Millie at the beginning, in my head, in our heads, and probably the heads of everyone in this book, was way older than she was. Like, she's saving for a down payment, she's taking care of her mom, she had a lot thrown on her. And now Agatha is in this kind of weird transactional relationship with her. But while she's also in a position of authority, she's still a professor at the university. She has money. She has access to things. She's giving money to Millie. Like, that relationship was inappropriate in so many different ways. It really reminded me of like Margot and Mark in the last book that we just read. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, like, Margot was being taken advantage of by Mark, and Millie's being taken advantage of by Agatha.
Yeah.
And I know we get Agatha's perspective, and you know, there are some qualities about her that could be, no, actually, I think, okay, Agatha's the worst. like I want to talk about that for a bit.
Everyone in this book is the worst.
They are, but I still have a soft spot for Millie, because I think that people aren't giving her enough credit. I think Millie's someone who's very mature, and because she's mature, people expect more of her than they should. That's kind of my take on Millie.
Yeah.
And she's still 24 years old, being taken advantage of by RDs who should probably be checking in with them more often, by Agatha, by her friends. Like, I know there's moments with her friends that were like not cool with like the whole money situation. Fine, that's true, that's accurate. But I think overall, like, Millie was just not really set up for success in so many different ways. How did Millie was your favorite character, like, in the first half, and it sounds like you've kind of like gone away from that a little bit. So I want to hear what you think of her.
Well, it's interesting. Like, I mean, I still think she's my favorite character in the book, right? Like, we're talking about her as a person, you know, of course I don't like her, but as a character, I really like her. Yeah. And, you know, I think that there's just so much depth to her. And we find out that, you know, she's been really sort of tunnel vision on building up this nest egg to buy this house and all of that she's been sort of neglecting everyone else's financial situations, right? Yeah, we find out that like she's kind of freeloading in some ways, right? And it seems totally fine to her because she doesn't, you know, we talked about this in the last episode to some extent around, you know, you kind of assume everyone's in the same sort of financial situations because you don't have a lot of wealth signals. And that's sort of what Millie's sort of benefiting from in a way, right? She's like, oh, yeah, I will take the pill for free, or, you know, be okay with someone else's kindness and not offer to pay them back.
Remember
even
when
though
they were out for drinks with
but
like even the little things, like they're out for drinks and she's getting like the cheapest thing on the menu, and Colette, who like arguably shouldn't have any more money than Millie does, is like, it's okay, get what you want, it's on me, and then she orders something more expensive. Yeah, like little things like that are like, girl, you're just like, I don't know, you're kind of taking advantage of her at that point. Anyways, keep going.
Right. Yeah. But on the flip side of that, right, I love that we are talking about them as people, right? We're talking about their moral and ethical sort of, I don't know, what's the word? Wrongdoings, I guess, in this situation. So I really liked that. And I could get into it and I could be like, hey, like, you're making some really poor choices. I don't feel like I got that with some of the other characters. And I feel almost like why didn't Tyler and Casey get the same sort of attention? You know, we talked a lot about Tyler in the last episode, and she feels really one-dimensional to me. And so does Casey, but Tyler has really been a central part of the second half. And so I'm curious to know your thoughts there. You know, we talked about, she has, you know, she's unfeeling. She's really just motivated to hurt someone. And she continues to do that. But we have no reason to understand why she's doing any of this. And to me, that feels like really unbelievable. I'm just curious to know how you felt about that.
I believe it because I believe she's a psychopath, and that's why she's one-dimensional. Casey, I think, is like an NPC. She's there for some texture, just throw in some like southern drawl.
Yeah.
Fine. We know nothing about her. Tyler, I honestly think is evil. Like, she's a villain. She's a villain without a backstory. Like and maybe there'll be some fan fiction where she does like a Maleficent kind of thing and there is this like crazy backstory. But I honestly think that she is like a true villain in this. There's a moment at the end where it was like the nail in the coffin for Tyler when she's talking to Agatha in the car, and Agatha's like begging her to not like jeopardize Millie's job, and Tyler says something along the lines of like, why would I do something for you if I'm not getting anything in return? Like, she has that mentality that like, if I'm not getting something out of this, I'm not doing it. So she doesn't have a modicum of like humanity in her. So I stand by what I said about her being a psychopath. I definitely believe that that's true now. And I think that's why she is the way she is. I think she gets off on like having people lose their jobs and setting people up. I think that's why she pays people, because she knows that like in that way she has a sense of control over them. You know, the moment you get money involved in a situation, you do have a bit of control there. And she knows that, and that's why she does it.
No, yeah, for sure. I guess where I'm coming from is that every villain has a backstory, and I just want a little bit more. Like, why do you want the dog? Why are you so evil? Like, why are you so unfeeling? Like, what is going? Like, there's a couple of gaps. I'm just like, what was your childhood like? Let me know. You know what I mean? A little bit more attention to that would have been appreciated.
I don't think Tyler had like an inciting event in her life that led her to be the way that she is. That's the vibe that I get. I get the vibe that she was born. Are people born psychopaths? Now I kind of like want to do a deep dive on this. I have to reread that book. Anyways, I won't keep going on Tyler being a psychopath. I do want to know what you think of Agatha, because Agatha pissed me the fuck off so much. The thing that, and I wrote it down, I want to know if you felt the same way. I had the biggest like eye roll moment when, and don't get me wrong, what happened to her was very sad, very tragic. That was horrible. She like she did a thing. It was an accident. It led to a man dying. Horrible. But then she's telling Robin this story, and she goes, after that, like, I really went through it. And Robin's like, tell me about it. And she's like, I started to partake in pleasure deprivation. And Robin's like, what is that? And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this girl like never left her house. She didn't eat. She didn't do anything. She goes, yeah, I would always take the second best thing. And I'm like, wait, what? She's like, if I went for dinner, this is how I can hear it. Like, if I went for dinner, she's like, if I went for dinner and I wanted something on the menu, I would get the thing I wanted second most. If I was in a race and I was about to win, not that I was always about to win, but oftentimes I would take second place. I'm like, bitch, that's not pleasure deprivation.
That's funny.
What are you talking about? I had to like slam the book shut, roll my eyes into the back of my head. And Robin does call her out on it, but I'm just like, what is this? Like, did you feel the anger in that moment? Like, what was your, and I mean, that's just one small piece, but I'm like, for me, that was a defining moment for Agatha.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like now that you're saying it, I'm like, oh, okay, that does sound really bad. But when I was reading it, I was like, okay, like grief manifests in different ways.
You're
I was
so
like, oh, that
generous.
sucks. Yeah, I do think I was being kind of generous with her. But yeah, in hindsight, yeah, that sucks.
I didn't get the
She,
filet mignon.
yeah.
I got the sirloin. I don't know what's
Mhm.
better out of those two, but it's like, sorry.
It does feel like she's like inflating these moments of suffering, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean there is an element of like, you're processing trauma, and this is one way that you'd process trauma, and she's becoming aware of it, and she's sort of trying to share that. So I mean, like, I don't want to take away from that part of it, but on the other side, you are right. Like, it's not like she's doing like, she's not allowing herself to have pleasure. She's just like, okay, I just don't want the best thing. So
And good for
apart,
you that the best thing was always on the table for you. Like that was kind
yeah,
of like the thing that killed me.
is always available to you for sure. Also, it's so interesting that she's being wildly unethical throughout this book, right?
Yes.
And is just kind of putting off acknowledging that. But I think she knows, right? And even like when she's talking to Robin about it, she's kind of cagey about it. And that's why, like, she knows that all of this is unethical. And I just thought that it was a cool sort of, you know, tying of the ribbon to bring it back to Robin being the one to call out, like, you're being unethical. And because, when this book started out, we were talking about how Robin was being kind of cagey, and she was kind of, not being fully in the relationship, and, causing Agatha to feel like she's invested in this relationship when her partner isn't fully there with her. But it's almost like Agatha was the bad guy all along. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Yeah. So I thought that part of it was really nicely done.
I agree. And we're always getting Robin through Agatha's lens, right? So I don't think it was necessarily always a fair interpretation of Robin. But it is funny to me how the first half of the book really vilified Robin and really like held Agatha and Millie to a certain regard. And the second half was almost like a complete untangling of these two people who seem so above it all, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, absolutely.
yeah, I loved that Robin just called her out on that. Like, I thought that was such a cool moment and Robin was being so chill. She's like, you know what? Oh, you have a date? Like, I don't care. And then she's like, well, how old is she? She's like 24. She's like, what? Is she your student? And she's like, she's not my student. She's not my student. She's like, is she a student? Like, she's a child. Like, what are you doing? And I do think that there are degrees of wrongness, if that makes sense. And everything that Robin was doing, like taking what was given to her freely because Agatha is the guesser, as we've all, Robin never really did anything wrong. The only thing was that she wasn't upfront with Agatha in regards to her not going to Arkansas. That was like the one thing where I was like, okay, not cool. You guys are married. But Agatha never said anything to Robin about the money. It was always just kind of given to her. So Robin was taking. And we were only getting like the internal struggle from Agatha. So I think there was a lot of things that Agatha like conflated in her mind that Robin just like legitimately didn't know.
It's funny. And as I was reading this, I had to keep reminding myself that Agatha was younger than I thought, because I was reading her characters being much older. I don't know. I kept like defaulting to like mid 50s, 60 for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, like much
38.
older. She's 38. Yeah, she just turned 38. We know that from early on. But for some reason, the way that it was written kept defaulting her in my head as being much older. And I think like even with some of your reading, that's what I'm hearing, right? Like I feel like when you think about 24 to 38, that's a 14-year age gap. That feels like, more acceptable. But I think, yeah, in my head, I kept like sort of, and so I had those moments, and then I sort of bring myself back and be like, actually, like she's 38, she's still in her 30s. So, I mean, there's that element of it too. Like, I don't know, like we are sort of if she had been 30 or if she'd been 32, I feel like we would have been more forgiving of her too. So I feel like that sort of
I think it was
varies
the fact
also.
that she was a teacher.
Yeah.
And Millie was a student.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, 14-year age gap is still pretty big, but like I think that the circumstances, and then also Agatha had been like paying her for these articles. So it was just like these levels of that just made the whole situation a lot more muddied, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's and then paying off everyone's paying off everyone in this book.
Everyone is paying off everyone. Okay, this book, this is like, I don't know, the ending of the book. It ends at a Target. It's like Kennedy and her mom, and they've had their moment where her mom's like, never do that again, and Kennedy decides to go in with the lie and is like, nope, I won't. And her mom like sees a Target up ahead. They describe it as like the white bullseye in the circle of red, and it's like on the horizon, and they go, do you need anything? And Kenny's like, no, I'm good. And she pulls up anyway. She's like, well, we can just go in, we can just look around. And that's how it ends. It ends in the parking lot of a Target. And I just want to know what you thought of the ending, and like, why the Target? Like, why Kennedy and her mom? Their storyline seems so insignificant compared to the storyline of like Agatha and Millie. That seemed to be like plot A, and then this Kennedy thing was more of a B plot. But it ends with the two of them in a Target parking lot of all places. I just want to know what you thought of the ending.
I mean, I think there's like something specific about the Target, right? Like than just walking around a mall. I think the Target experience is more just you're nesting. You're buying stuff that comforts you, as opposed to I mean, yeah, you might be buying lip smackers, but you might also be buying things you're cozier in. You're buying candles. You're buying things that make your room feel, cozier and things like that. It is comforting. Yeah, I think I just keep going back to comfort, really.
There's something about this book that I felt like was so reflective and dynamic, and then it like ends in a Target parking lot. I don't know, my mind was kind of reeling. I'm like, does it have to do with like comfort and capitalism?
Is it product
does
placement?
It have to do? Yeah, like, is it? Well, it's funny because they talk about Target throughout the book, but at the end they don't call it Target. They like reference it because like they know that we know what it is. Is it a little bit? Is there a small nod to the fact that like nothing really changed? Like that's what her and her mom did. They would always like go to Target. That was their comfort place. And even after all of these strange things, at the end of the day, it was just her and her mom, and they're in a Target again, which is where they started. Like at the beginning of the book, they had just come from a Target buying all the stuff for her room, and they're back in one again. Like, I don't know. I'm definitely curious to know what people thought of the ending specifically. If anyone has any thoughts, send them to us.
Let us know. Let us know what you think is happening there. I think that covers it. Should we talk about the next book?
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Okay, me too. Okay, so we are going to be reading How to Solve Your Own Murder.
The covers are different again.
They are. I like yours better.
I think I like yours better. We always like the other ones better. We just want what we can't have.
It's true. It's so by funny. Kristen Perrin. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't realize that till I looked this book up just before we got on this call. Apparently there's 2 parts. There's a second part that's coming out March of this year.
Oh.
Yeah.
They're pulling a Wicked on us.
But I mean, I don't know if they're that. It feels like the second part in a series, but a different sort of storyline. So it's not like it continues on in that way. But yeah, I'm really intrigued by this storyline. It's about a woman in the 60s, and she's just sort of convinced that she's going to be murdered, and no one believes her. And there's 2 storylines. So she does end up being murdered, and her niece, I guess, is looking into it and doing that investigation part of it. So we're going to see, Frances in the 60s ranting about how she's going to die in mysterious ways. And, you know, everyone's like, no, you're not. Stop it. And then we're going to have that second part a few years later, a few decades later, and we're going to find out what happened. So I'm excited.
So cool. I'm so excited for this one. It feels like a little spooky, a little like my sister-in-law had just finished The Fury, which is one that we had done last season. And she messaged me today to be like, I just finished. It was so good. I'm like, I need like a thrillery book next. So I'm like very excited that we're reading this one.
This one has like a skull and a crow. And that's giving me Edgar Allan Poe vibes. Does yours have that?
I love that. I have a crow. I have 2 crows on mine. One's for sorrow, 2's for joy. So which one's you just have 1 crow?
Just one, yeah.
Oh, I got 3. 3's for a girl.
All right. Well, I mean,
4.
It
4
is a
for a
girl.
boy. I've counted 4. Sorry, I'm done.
All right. Well, there's about 400 pages, so let's read the first 200, which is up to chapter 23, and we'll talk about it next time.
Sounds great. See you at book club.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.